the latest news about the battlefield. We've learned that Hezbollah, by using FPV drones, they have hit three Iron Dome batteries. And what else can we learn from the battlefield between Hezbollah and Israel?
Well, this videos were amazing. Obviously, these batteries are inside occupied Palestine. So this means that Hezbollah is flying these FPVs for tens of kilometers. So I don't think we've seen that being done in any other battle zone, not the Ukrainians, not the Russians. And they're hitting these batteries as well as other military sites. We've seen some videos from the colonists in these northern settlements showing that there's wire cables on top of their home or beside their car, realizing that there was some operation the night before in the vicinity of their homes. We've seen also the Zionist colony in Naqoura on the Palestinian side, not the Naqoura of Lebanon. We've seen videos of how that FPV also was flying around inside the base there, the Israeli base, and hunting for soldiers and actually hitting them. We also saw a video released yesterday by Hezbollah in commemorations of the May 17th agreement in 1983, after Israel occupied Beirut and brought in a collaborationist president, Pierre Gemayel. He signed on the 17th of May 1983 a surrender agreement. Basically, this is they released this video to show the government of Lebanon that is right now negotiating with the Zionists in DC that it will not pass. Whatever they sign is irrelevant. And this video was amazing. It was a collection of all the operations of Hezbollah against the Israeli occupation stronghold in the Bayada area in South Lebanon on the coast. This is a village that the Israeli occupied and set up a base for all their command of the coastal area. And Hezbollah showed a collection of around 8 attacks on this command center from different FPVs, and in finally showing how the Israelis ran away from this base and abandoned it and left an Israeli flag flying on the base, and an FPV comes and takes out that Israeli flag. So what the Israelis are facing in the south of Lebanon is unprecedented. According to their own assessments, around 80% of all of their operations had to be halted, and they do not move during the day. There's orders to all the Zionist soldiers that they do not move in the open during the daylight, except for death or life situations. And still, they are, receiving all these beatings. And in retaliation, I think the Zionists have increased their massacres over the last 48 hours, 24 hours, also attacking multiple residential homes far, far away from the front lines, killing whole families in multiple villages. This is the only thing that the Israelis are able to do right now. On the battlefield, they are defeated already.
When it comes to the Israeli attacks on Lebanon, they're basically talking about Hezbollah targets or something related to Hezbollah. What is the reality of those targets?
Yeah, the reality of those targets is complete families being wiped out. Why would any Hezbollah fighter be staying in a village in Lebanon, South Lebanon, north of the Litani, with their whole family, multiple generations? This is a clear, ridiculous thing to claim. The Hezbollah fighters will not be staying with their families, and their families will not be staying in their regular homes. It's mainly poor, impoverished families that are working on the fields, that have no choice, no place to go. They do not want to be refugee centers or displacement centers. They want to stay in their home and be able to feed themselves off their land, and this is the vast majority of the victims. Similarly, we saw multiple attacks on farmers in their farmlands as they are plowing their fields over the last 24 hours. There was also kidnappings of shepherds and farmers in the foothills of the Golan Heights, and the return of some of those kidnapped. So all of this is indication of how desperate the Israelis are, and they literally have a quota of dead that they need to, for every Israeli soldier that is killed and or injured, they have a quota of civilians that they need to kill and injure because of how unable they are to achieve any real victories on the battlefield.
Is Hezbollah getting its information using drones to go to the regions to see the gathering of Israeli soldiers, and how do they find the situation right now in the southern part of how many gatherings of Israeli forces do we have in those areas?
Yeah, so Hezbollah is using multiple technologies to track the movement of the Israeli soldiers. Of course, one of them is those FPVs that hover around. Not only the what we saw from that video from Al Bayada is not only these FPVs are being used to attack, but there's also FPVs that are surveilling the location, confirming the hits. All of those. So that's one devices. We also saw from other videos that Hezbollah is using night vision and heat vision to track the movements of the Israelis during the night. And we saw multiple videos showing the kills happening on those night vision and heat vision videos. There's also surveillance drones that are being fired all the time. Not only those suicide drones that are used on the battlefield, other than the FPVs, but also surveillance drones. And some of them are, very small. They're kind of being fired and collecting the information and returning, or just doesn't matter if they return these drones. And people are on the ground. Hezbollah has a lot of its fighters between the villages, between the forests and so forth, and they are watching everything. This is why, also because of the geography of South Lebanon, it's also predictable any paths that the Israelis need to take to advance. And if they need to advance in those paths, they're already set up booby traps. There's IEDs. There's also the fact that these anytime there's mechanized movement of Israeli troops, they need to push forward their bulldozers to make paths for them if they don't want to take the regular roads and what have you. And that is why we saw Hezbollah also concentrating over the last 2 weeks, specifically on the destruction of all of the construction equipment that the Israelis are bringing forward. A big chunk of the Israeli soldiers dead and injured are the contractors that are operating these construction equipment. So right now, the Israelis find themselves unable to move mechanized columns. And when they use specialized forces, infantry forces, as happened 2 nights ago, in an attempt to advance from the Shab'a Farms area towards the southern parts of the Biqa Valley, that special force immediately fell into a ambush. They were monitored. Clearly, the Hezbollah is watching all the bases, and any movement, even on foot, in the middle of the night. And they had to extract that special force. Hezbollah is also, the monitoring capabilities is so advanced that yesterday the Israelis admitted that one of the commanders of their battalions in the north was assassinated by Hezbollah by an attack on his car inside occupied Palestine. He's traveling between the bases, and in multiple FPV videos that we watched, There was command and control vehicles, APCs with all the antennas on them that are specialized to control the battlefield. The FPV actually going through the back door. So they are monitoring, they know where the command centers are, they know where the commanders of these battalions are. They're hitting them inside occupied parts of Lebanon, they're hitting them inside the north of Palestine. And there's that this is all indications of very advanced surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities.
We had other videos, Laith, about these FPV drones hitting wireless communication systems. And what are the functions of these wireless communication system? Why do they need them to be in the area in the southern part of Lebanon?
Yeah, so the further they are from their bases inside occupied Palestine, they need to set up relay mechanisms for the communication. And these communication hubs inside the occupied parts of Lebanon in the south are necessary to control and command the movement of the troops, and to also give coordinates for artillery and aircraft bombardment. So this is, when we watch that video from Al Bayada and see these FPVs go after the communication relays set up in a window, and then go over after another window with the advanced cameras that are set up in it, and then go after another part of the communication relay and information gathering equipment. So this is all shows you that Hezbollah also knows every piece of equipment that the Israelis are using, can recognize them when they're hidden behind the window or so on. And the use of the FPVs, the Zionists are unable to find until now solutions for that. They're dumping hundreds of millions of dollars on all these projects to speed up possibilities for finding solutions for the FPVs. One of these stupid solutions was setting up tarps and fishing nets over the locations where the Israeli soldiers are gathering inside occupied parts of South Lebanon, which is making them easy targets. It's declaring to Hezbollah where the switch house in what village the Israelis are gathering. Therefore, well, if we can't get it with an FPV, you can get it definitely with a suicide drone and or guided missiles. So the solutions that are put forward by the Israelis for the FPVs are actually making them even easier targets for Hezbollah.
Laith, Israel believes that they're gonna advance in the southern part of Lebanon, and they want to annex the southern part of. We know that. And how do you see the situation in the northern part of Israel? And do we have any sort of information of new attacks in the northern part of Israel?
Yes, yes. So those attacks on the batteries of the Iron Dome are not separate by themselves. They're not unique in terms of attacks on north parts of Palestine. What's unique about them is that it was a battery of air defense missiles, but there is constant attacks on the houses that the Israeli soldiers are hiding in. It's very important to note for the viewers that almost every colony on the border in the north of Palestine and the colonies in the Golan Heights are military zones, and the residents of those colonies have to be part of the military service and or intelligence services. So it's not like the residents in Kiryat Shmone are regular colonists. No, no, they are all soldiers and military and intelligence operatives, and they've over the last 2.5 months, basically all their families had to leave. Those who are staying in the houses are already part of the service and the fight. and they're gathered in different locations, and Hezbollah is hunting them. And the same intelligence gathering that Hezbollah has in the south of Lebanon, it is using in the north of Palestine, and it is hunting these Israeli soldiers in these homes where they are gathering as temporary bases, because the Israeli soldiers had to actually empty their regular bases because they're so easy as targets, right? So they spread out their soldiers in the front into residential homes in these frontline colonies, and now Hezbollah is hunting them there. We can, from eye sight, you could see some of these colonies completely destroyed in levels that we didn't see even through the 66-day war in 2024. So I think the damage is huge. The infrastructure and communication, even in those colonies, is as damaged as the frontline bases.
Laith, yesterday I talked with Professor Marandi. He said that the destruction that is happening in the southern part of Lebanon is not something new. And all of these buildings they're gonna rebuild everything and even better than what it was before. And
Inshallah, inshallah.
what is the history? Because this is not something that happened yesterday or the day before yesterday. It's a huge sort of history behind what's going on in the southern part of Lebanon. This is not the first time Israel is destroying everything. What do we
Yeah,
know about that? What can you say about that?
yeah. In 1942, in 1949, in 1978, in 1982, many of these villages were totally wiped out, destroyed to the every standing structure destroyed by the Zionists multiple times. And multiple times the Lebanese population, the people of the land, rebuilt with the money of their extended families around the world, that all persist to continue. Some of these families have been migrating from Lebanon from the 1800s, right? And they're still connected to these villages, and have, you go to a place in Venezuela, and there'll be a whole, the area, all the Lebanese Venezuelans in this town or so forth are from one village, and they have a village association named after their homeland village that they haven't, that they immigrated to Venezuela 3 generations ago. And they go and invest in their village, and they go and help their extended family and rebuild their homes. Above and beyond, of course, the generosity of all the peoples around the world that are, against imperialism, are for the liberation of Palestine, the generosity of Iran in the rebuilding after the 2006 war. So it's not something new. And I want to say, even it goes even deeper and longer time. The Crusaders did the same thing. The Crusaders leveled whole villages and towns and cities and cannibalized them even, okay? And people still rebuilt, and the villages have the same name from 6,000 years ago, okay? So whatever the Zionists do, as long as they don't break the will of the people, and as long as the people insist to, continue to have their roots connected to that 6,000 years of history, in this persistence of continuing to live, they'll be able to rebuild, and they will rebuild, and Israel will not be able to control the land in South Lebanon. I think Israel in general is at the last days of its existence. They're very, very violent days, last days, but they are the last days, the throes of a mad dog that's gonna be put down soon.
Laith, I've seen, sorry,
صح صح.
I've seen a video you reporting about what's going on in Lebanon with the case of refugees. And what is the situation of those Syrian people in Lebanon? And what's happening there?
This is one of the sad stories that are not be reported that often. And of course, we know 2 million Syrians became refugees in Lebanon during the war on Syria. And then you had the takeover by a Jolani regime, and a million at least more Syrians from minorities, Alawi, Shia, Christian, Druze, crossed into Lebanon in those days of massacres. And they are spread around the country. They're in the south, they're in the Beqa, they're in the north, most of them working in menial jobs, in the fields, and what have you. And the Lebanese government, in this situation of a war where there's refugees in the country from Syria that are getting displaced inside Lebanon, the Lebanese government has abandoned them, and there is no support for them from any international agencies at this moment. So we see a lot of these Syrian field workers with their whole families staying in many dangerous zones. I mentioned earlier those Syrian shepherds that got kidnapped amongst like 8 different field workers that were kidnapped by the Israelis. Well, the Lebanese kidnapped civilians were returned, but those 2 Syrian field workers, nobody knows about them, and Al-Jolani's government's not going to ask about them. And Israel could do its worst, and I don't think anyone on the planet will come and hold it, to task for what it did. Similarly, a few days ago, we saw another Syrian father. He's on his motorbike. He's a farm worker. He's transporting his 12-year-old daughter on the back of the bike to family, and their motorcycle was attacked by an Israeli drone. The child survived, the 12-year-old girl, and she ran in the fields, and the Israelis chased her with two drones, two drone missiles to kill her. So this is kind of the situation of the Syrian population. The video you're talking about, the report that you mentioned, was here in the waterfront, close to the old city of Beirut, and it's an area that is for festivals and what have you. And there's all these tented cities of refugees from southern villages in Lebanon, and there is refugees that are Syrian that are also in this tented city area. And the Lebanese police and the Lebanese government want to, by force, take the Syrian refugees that are camped there and throw them on the border with Syria. And of course, many of these people are wanted by the Jolani regime because they come from minorities, and will be abused if they're returned to Syria. So the Lebanese refugees in this tent city area are refusing to move to places that the Lebanese government is offering, not only because those places are limited and it's more crowded and there's not much services, but also in solidarity with their Syrian brothers and sisters in this camp city, because they know if the Lebanese refugees leave, the Syrian refugees in this tent city will become easy targets, and nobody will be there to protect them if the Lebanese government comes to abuse them. So the situation is hard. There's also another similar situation happening in Palestinian refugee camps, where the camps in the south have become targets, and there's a big wave of Palestinian refugees from the refugee camps in the south to the center of the country and the north of the country, overcrowding and no services. Again, overall, this is the situation of the displaced in the country.